Hey guys, it's your boy Chili. Let's take a look at the homework for tutorial 7 quickly here. We had to do what? We had to load some settings from a file for the SNEC game. So first things first, let's create a class for those settings. We'll go project and new item. And I'll just call this one game settings.h. Game settings.h. There we go. And what are we going to do? Well, let's do class game settings. All right, so private. We need some data members for the settings that we are going to be loading from our file. So first thing you should probably do is create a model file that you can use to kind of work off of when you're creating your code. And that's what I've done here. I've got the 5 things in here. It's actually 6 numbers because board dimensions is 2 numbers. And so we're going to store these in some variables in the place where fresh is the taste. I'm just going to put that off screen now so that I can type. And so we want int tile size, int board width, int board height, int in poison, int in food, and float speed up rate. So these are going to be our private variables, public. Now what do we need? Well, we need a constructor. So let's go game settings. Now what the constructor will take is it'll take a file name, and that's the file that we want to load our settings from. So # include string and a file name constant std string reference to file name. There we go. And the other functions that we're going to want getters that will allow, parts of our program to get those settings and use them. So let's create a bunch of getters, int get tile size const, etc. All right, so we create the prototypes for all the getters. Now let's implement the constructor where all the magic happens. And well, I guess fuck me. You know what? You can suck a dick, Visual Studio. I am taking none of your shit today. Add new item. CPP file. Game settings.cpp. Add that fucker. There we go. Now toggle. And create definition. There you go. Fuck you, Visual Studio. Okay, so we're going to need to do some file access. So we're going to include fstream, and let's get rid of that space because it pisses me off. And so what are we going to do? Well, we're going to open a file. So we're going to go std fstream in file name, and that'll work. Now what we want to do here is we want to loop. And we want to keep, no, we don't want a while loop, we want a for loop. And we're going to have a string that holds lines of text that we load. So string line, and what we're going to do is every iteration, we are going to do std get line from into line, and nothing in the iteration. So this step here is going to be the test and the iterate, because getLine will get us a new line, but getLine also returns reference to the stream, so we can test to see if we've hit end of stream, end of file. So this will work, and we'll just loop on all of the lines in our text file. And all we want to do now is we want to do if statements, checking to see if the lines that we load match up with any of these headings. So for example, we go if line is equal to, and I'll just copy from my trusty text file here, is equal to tile size. Then we do some stuff about that. Else if line is equal to, you get the idea. So that should look something like this, and then all we got to do is load the shit. So if it is tile size, we go in and we load into tile size. And if it is board dimensions, we go in, and there's 2 of them. So we load into board width and board height using the chaining. Same for the other guys. And that should look something like this. So basically we're just looping through lines. If they match one of our headings, we load in the data. Otherwise we do nothing. Now there's a lot of error checking that we could do here and that we probably should do, but it's outside of what I gave as the scope for this tutorial homework. So it's optional. You don't have to do any error checking. I will talk about that a little bit at the very end of this video, but we won't be implementing any real robust error detection here and correction. Now, the last thing you want to do is you want to implement all of these getters. Nothing really interesting there, just a bunch of busy work. And when you get that done, that's going to look something like this. And there you go. You've got your game settings all set up. Now, what we want to do with this bullshit is we want to use it to initialize game. So where's game.h? So right now we've got a bunch of things. There are static const expressions. Those things have got to now be loaded at runtime from the file. One of the problems is that a lot of the settings are in board. And if you look in here, we're not passing parameters to board, only graphics. So board has its own bullshit that it's doing here. It's got its own static const expressions. We got to get rid of that shit. So let's handle board first. So things that we're going to be configuring about board are the dimensions of the cells and the width and the height of the board. So that's going to be this one and this one. And let's get rid of those initializers because they don't mean shit anymore. And now that int and height are not static const expression, they aren't compile time known, we can't use them to initialize an array. So that means we can't use a C array. We've got to use a dynamic array. So we go into here and we go equals null pointer and we make this a pointer. So now we are going to be dynamically allocating that. We are going to be loading these values. What we're going to do for the constructor for boards, we're going to pass it a constant reference to # include game settings. And we use those game setting reference to initialize some stuff. So game settings. There we go. So let's copy this. Toggle, we'll paste it in here. And now we want to initialize some bullshit from our game settings. So we go dimension is settings dot fucking IntelliSense is being a little bitch. Okay, well, wait, let me see here. You want to play it like that. You want to be a fucking asshole. You go right ahead. Settings dot get tile size. Probably should have named it get cell size because everything is cell, but whatever. It's been a while. Width. Settings dot get board width. And height is going to be settings dot get board height. So far, so good. Now we need to be able to initialize the cells, the array. So contents is going to be a new cell contents array width times height. And let's just double make sure that width and height are initialized before contents. They are, so that's fine. And remember, before we were initializing contents, we were setting all of the elements, we were initializing them to empty. So we've got to do that shit in here, otherwise we're going to have problems. So, for int I is equal to 0, as long as I is less than width times height. You fucking asshole. And I plus plus. And we're just going to do contents at I is equal to cell contents empty. And there you go. We initialize those ones, set them all to empty. Everyone should be motherfucking happy. This is the board all set up. Now, we go into game.cpp, go into game.h. We're going to add at the very beginning here, game settings. That's the first thing we want to load. Game settings, initialize that. Settings equals, and I believe I named my thing config.txt. So let's give it that name again. Settings.txt, that's what it was. Settings, thank you for fucking up my screen. You piece of shit capture software. There we go. So we can call the constructor like this with the assignment notation. And that'll construct settings, and then that'll be available for constructing other things. Now, when we construct board, we want to pass it reference to settings so we can use that to construct itself. And all should be well in the world. I believe this is basically our job done, except, well, I mean, now that we are dynamically allocating contents, we have got to destroy. I almost forgot that. We got to destroy we got to create a destructor for board. And because we're creating a destructor, we should also do something about the copy members. So we'll go board, const board, and is equal to delete, and board reference operator equals const board ampersand equals delete. So delete those guys. We don't need them. We don't want to. Don't waste our time implementing them. We're never going to use them. Create definition, and in here, delete. Remember, it's an array, so we got to do that. I forgot that before. And contents, and it's going to do that because I hate it. And then we're going to go contents is equal to null pointer, because that's what you do when you're a good C++ programmer. There we go. So that is board all dynamicized up in game.h. It's got its chisel in. Now we need to make in poison. That's not supposed to be that. In food. And SNCC speed up factor. So we're taking these constants and we're making them not constants. Because now they're not constant, they're loaded at runtime. And we got to do that bullshit in here. So, now what is it? In poison settings dot get. Yeah, you're going to do that to me again, aren't you? Get poison amount. You fucking asshole. You dirty bastard. In food settings dot get food amount. Yeah. And SNCC speed up factor settings dot get speed up rate. I believe it was. Little mess up in the naming convention, but you know what? I don't give a fuck. So now we test it out with our vanilla model, which these numbers here that I put in here, they're just the standard numbers that we had in the source file. So it should give us the same result. And if we run it, we get the same result. So it works. Fucking works. And to test it, to prove that it is working, let's change the tile size. Let's make the tile size 7. Save that. We'll run it. And there you go. Fucking smaller SNCC. Now, note that there is, there's some problems here. Let's try another one here. No. Let's try another one. A different one. So let's make the tile size, 80. And let's take the board dimensions 8. No. Let's make them 6. No, we'll make them 8 by 6. And we'll make the poison amount, so 6 times 8 is 48, so we'll make it 24. Make the food amount, I don't know, 4. Speed up rate the same. Save that, run it, and it should be a big ass snack game. There you go. The biggest ass snack game you did ever see. Fucking sweet, man. You know you love it. Now, one of the requirements for the homework was that it should be able to read the different values independent of order. So let's just mess up the order a little bit here, and we'll save that, and we will try to run the snack game. And if it doesn't crash or anything weird, then we know that that also works. Great. Now there are a few problems with this. Like again, if I take the tile size and I bring it back down to like 4, you're going to notice right away it doesn't center your thing in the screen. It puts it up on the top left. So there are problems there. There are things that we could improve. I mean, obviously there are other parameters that we could set in here. We could set the max speed or the minimum speed, the starting speed. We could specify the poison as a ratio instead of as an absolute number of poison tiles. We could specify as a ratio of the total tiles. We might also want to specify the padding between tiles, because when you change the tile size, now the ratio of tile to padding gets, all fucked up. But we could also do things in the code to make dynamic adjustments. So we could dynamically adjust the padding based on the tile size, make it a certain percentage of tile size. We definitely want to adjust like the position of the board on the screen based on, how big the board is. So that it is centered in the middle of the screen. And, just that sort of idea. But we're not going to do that here. We've done enough for the purposes of this homework to practice some stuff with strings and streams. This was enough. The other thing that we would definitely want to do if we were doing this for reals, and I might do it off screen, I don't know, is we want to do some error handling. So, I mean, like here, if the line is one of these guys, then we handle it. But if it's not, we just skip it. So what if there's just garbage in this text file? Normally, we would want to flag that as an error. We want to detect a line that is no good. So, I mean, if the line is just empty, that's fine. So if line.empty, that's fine. But if otherwise, if it's not empty and if it's not one of the things that we're expecting, we might want to have an error. And the way you could do that, and this is not an introduction, by the way, but you could throw an exception. So we could go throw std runtime error, and we could give a little message like bad motherfucking input, bad motherfucking line in settings file. And I could do plus, and I could add the line in here. Does that work? I believe it may yeah, it works. So we could do bad motherfucking line in settings file, and then we could give that line, and that will be thrown as an exception, and it will be caught somewhere else and handled, probably by, giving a message to the user. And I'm going to go over exceptions. They're going to get their own video sometime in the future. So don't worry about this. But this is one way you could handle this situation. So let's say I just put some garbage in here in a bad place in the file. And then I run this. And what you get, unhandled, bad motherfucking line in settings file. That's what you get. So that's one thing we could do. Another thing we could do to handle errors is check to see if in, so in.fail. So if any of these extraction operations fail, that means that there was bad stuff in here. Maybe there was some letters, or it was malformed input. And also we want to check to see if the numbers in here actually make sense. If I put a -1 in here, let me just get rid of this, save that. If I put a -1, it loads it fine. But when we try to run the game, obviously it's fucking messed up and it doesn't make any sense. So negative values, probably not a good idea. So yeah, we'd want to check the values, make sure they're in a decent range, check the input, make sure the input processed properly. We'd also want to check to make sure that the config file actually had all of the lines. So check to make sure that all of these values were properly set at the end of the constructor. And if not, that is another error that you'd want to throw. And yeah, but I'm actually going to save that probably when I do the tutorial on exceptions. I'm going to use this as an example to teach exceptions. And then I'm going to teach you how to throw exceptions so that they can be caught and displayed as errors, and also how to throw exceptions, catch them early, and recover from them. So don't just crash the program and display an error, but recover from the error, do something meaningful, and allow the execution to continue. But that's something you're going to have to look forward to in the future. For now, I'm Chili. This was the homework solution to tutorial 7, and I will see you soon with some more C++.